At the far end of Miller's auto shop, where the paint peeled and the lights flickered, worked an old mechanic named Frank Dalton. Most just called him Old Frank. He was 63, thin as a rail, with hands permanently stained by oil and grease. His back was slightly bent, not just from age, but from a lifetime of hard work. The younger mechanics loved to laugh at him. They laughed at how slowly he moved. They laughed at his refusal to use the new diagnostic computers. They'd watch him fix engines by listening, not by plugging in a tablet. "Hey Frank," one of them joked one afternoon, "this isn't the Stone Age anymore. You sure you don't want us to get you a walker instead of a wrench?" The shop filled with laughter, but Frank never responded. He'd just wipe his hands on a rag and get back to work. To them, he was just an outdated mechanic, a relic the owner kept around out of pity. They had no idea why Mr. Miller still employed him. Frank didn't advertise his skills or brag. He barely even talked, but what they didn't know was that Frank had once built machines designed for war. One rainy morning, a massive military-grade truck was towed into the shop. It belonged to a private collector who'd bought it at an auction. The engine was completely dead. 3 other garages had already tried and failed to fix it. The young mechanics crowded around, brimming with confidence. "This thing's ancient," one declared. "Probably impossible to fix," another added. They plugged in their computers, but error codes just flashed across the screens. Sensors failed to respond. Hours went by and nothing worked. Frustration started to build. From his corner, Frank slowly stood up. "I can take a look," he said quietly. The laughter returned instantly. "You?" a mechanic scoffed. "This thing's way more complex than anything you've ever worked on." Frank didn't argue. He just walked over. He didn't use a computer or open a manual. Instead, he placed a hand on the cool metal hood and closed his eyes. Then a small smile appeared. "This engine's not dead," he announced. "It's choking." The shop fell silent. Frank began to work. He adjusted valves, rewired old connections, and rebuilt a damaged fuel system, all from memory. His hands moved with a calm, steady precision, as if he'd done this 1,000 times before. 2 hours later, he stepped back. "Try it now." The key turned, and the engine roared to life with a powerful rumble. Everyone froze. The shop owner, Mr. Miller, stared at Frank in disbelief. "Frank, where did you learn to do that?" Frank hesitated, his eyes seeming to gaze into the distant past. "I learned it a long time ago," he said softly. "During the war." The room went quiet. "What war?" someone asked. Frank took a deep breath. "I was 19 when they sent me overseas," he began. "I didn't carry a rifle. I carried tools." The younger mechanics who had once mocked him now leaned in, listening intently for the first time. "I was part of an engineering unit. We built and repaired tanks under fire, not in workshops on battlefields. In the mud, the smoke, with explosions all around. If a tank didn't run, soldiers didn't come home. Now no one was laughing. We didn't have computers back then," Frank continued. "We had our instincts. Sound, smell, feel. You learn fast when lives depend on it." A young mechanic swallowed hard. "You built tanks?" he asked, his voice full of awe. Frank nodded. "And fixed them while bullets were flying." The story spread like wildfire. Soon, customers were specifically asking for the old mechanic. Veterans would stop by just to shake his hand. One even recognized Frank's unit patch from decades ago and saluted him with tears in his eyes. The same mechanics who once mocked him now watched him work in silent admiration. One evening, the same young man who had joked about the walker approached him. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know." Frank offered a gentle smile. "You didn't ask," he replied. A few weeks later, the shop held a small ceremony. A local veteran group had heard about Frank and presented him with a faded medal he'd never bothered to replace. Frank stood awkwardly as everyone applauded. "I didn't do anything special," he insisted. "I just did my job," but everyone in that room knew better. The mocking was gone. The laughter had vanished. In its place was a deep and profound respect. And from that day on, anytime a young mechanic complained about outdated tools, someone would say, "Careful. That old man built tanks when history depended on it." Never judge someone by their silence or their age. The quietest people often carry the loudest histories. And the strongest hands are usually the ones that no longer need to prove themselves. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more.